Bon après-midi, bonsoir. Je suis ravi de vous accueillir à cette conférence virtuelle de haut niveau pour la reconstitution du Fonds des Nations Unies pour la consolidation de la paix. Je m'appelle Bob Ray. Je suis le représentant permanent du Canada auprès des Nations Unies et j'ai l'honneur de servir en tant que modérateur pour cet événement. My name is Bob Ray. I'm the permanent representative of Canada to the UN. And I have the honor of serving as moderator for this event. I'm also the chairman of the Peacebuilding Commission for this past year. My job will be to ensure that everyone who has asked for the floor gets an opportunity to speak. And because of the unprecedented number of ministers and ambassadors who've asked to speak, this will be some doing. I'm told I also have to ensure that we're going to be ending on time. So it's a bit of a challenge. It is now my pleasure to introduce our co-chairs and speakers for our opening segment. I will introduce them all as a group, and then I'll ask them to speak. The chair of today's event and our first speaker is His Excellency Antonio Guterres, who is the Secretary General of the United Nations. We're very honored to have the Secretary General with us today. Following him, we'll hear from His Excellency Julius Maada Bio, the President of the Republic of Sierra Leone. Following him will be His Excellency Abdallah Adam Hamdok, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Sudan. And following him, we'll hear from Ms. Leone Bowie, who's the Nobel Peace Prize laureate, as well as one of our featured speakers. Suivant Madame Bowie, nous allons entendre de Son Excellence Marc Garneau, le ministre des Affaires étrangères du Canada. Following him will be His Excellency Maas, who's the Federal Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Federal Republic of Germany. And our last featured speaker will be Ambassador Kasoor, who's the member of the Secretary General's Independent Eminent Persons for the 2020 Peacebuilding Architecture Review. The opening segment should last for about approximately 40 minutes, after which we're going to give the floor to member states in the order that is indicated on our speakers list. I will just note that the Secretary General will be with us until 9:45. And with those introductions out of the way, Mr. Secretary General, the floor. Those introductions out of the way, Mr. Secretary General.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. I'm happy to co-chair this Replenishment Conference for the Peacebuilding Fund. The scale of turmoil around the world requires concerted efforts to ease tensions and prevent further escalation. And the unprecedented challenge of COVID-19 has further exacerbated situations that were deteriorating even before the pandemic. I have, as you know, appealed for a global ceasefire to focus on our common enemy, the pandemic. And we need a renewed approach to multilateralism and international cooperation, an approach that goes beyond crisis response and boosts long-term investments in prevention and peace building, hand in hand with our efforts to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals. To secure a better future, we need to increase support to women and young people as agents for peace and stewards for inclusive development. Without their full participation, neither peace nor prosperity can be sustainable. Today, you will hear from local peace builders like Ms. José Tanibanda from the Central African Republic. While the country continues to face many challenges, I saw during my visit efforts supported by the Peacebuilding Fund to help stabilize Bambari, which for years had been at the crossroads of conflict, through a strategic combination of cash for work, rehabilitation, socioeconomic revitalization, and support to local peace committees. Our experience in countries with peacekeeping missions shows that PBF funding and Peacebuilding Commission engagement, when aligned with national and UN priorities, can be invaluable tools. Peacebuilding in fragile contexts requires political courage and leadership at national and local levels, but also the right support at the right time from the international community. We need to take risks for peace and enable stakeholders with the resources and space to seize opportunities. We have a responsibility to bring down the institutional silos and bring together in an agile and responsive manner the full range of the United Nations system capacities. And the Peacebuilding Fund aims to do just that. Its impact and cost effectiveness have been widely recognized and appreciated by the 50 nations it has supported. Yet, we continue to massively underinvest in it. The fund prioritizes areas that may otherwise be considered too risky or that are chronically underfunded, notably engaging women and youth and cross-border and regional initiatives. It mobilizes vital additional funding at national and regional levels. And over the past 3 years, for each dollar invested through the fund, countries have mobilized almost $8 additional for peace building. It fosters joint action across the United Nations system, from needs analysis to coordinated planning in support of national priorities. And it also enables partnerships with a wide range of stakeholders, from civil society actors to regional organizations and the World Bank, often kickstarting initiatives that others can scale up. With additional resources, the fund would also be uniquely placed to promote coordination between the United Nations and other development partners, specifically during periods of mission startup. Early and reliable funding by the fund is also essential in transition settings where large peace operations are drawing down. Finally, in a global context with significant volatility, the fund's flexibility is vital. As part of the United Nations comprehensive response to COVID-19, the PBF quickly responded to the risks and tensions heightened by the pandemic, working with regional partners and resident coordinators to adjust ongoing programs as needed and respond to emerging prevention priorities. As the medium-term effects of the pandemic become more apparent, it is more important than ever to ensure the fund is adequately and predictably resourced. Many member states recognize these, as acknowledged by the twin resolutions of the General Assembly and the Security Council on the 2020 Peacebuilding Architecture Review. In 2020, the Peacebuilding Fund mobilized over $180 million, an important sign of the trust the fund has garnered over the years and its demonstrated ability to deliver in the most difficult contexts. But its resources are now depleted. We must urgently replenish it. Doing so will save lives and serve as a clear demonstration of multilateral support. So far this cycle, only 24 member states have contributed, with 4 of them accounting for 70% of total resources. If all member states and partners contributed even a small amount to the fund, we will finally accomplish the much needed quantum leap and send a clear signal to the world. Together, we can successfully invest in building and sustaining peace. I urge those that have not yet contributed, in particular members of the Security Council and the Peacebuilding Commission, to act on your commitments and provide a contribution to this essential global instrument for peace. To cut a long story short, this is a fund that everybody recognizes acts quickly, acts effectively, brings together the UN system, brings other partners from outside the UN system, and mainly international financial institutions. It's not bureaucratic, but the level of resources it has had is very small compared with all the funds available in international cooperation in the situations it tackles. So it's time to give the Peacebuilding Fund the dimension it needs and deserves, to the benefit of all countries that need support in building peace.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. We will now hear from His Excellency Julius Maada Bio, the President of Sierra Leone. I know on the phone. President Maada Bio, you are free to speak.
Vous l'avez fait? On a un clavier pour faire ça. Hein?
Very much.
Là aussi? Donc vous allez comment faire ça comment?
The Secretary General of the United Nations. Excellent.
Oui, on me dit de register.
Secretary General of the United Nations.
Vous lisez pas?
Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I want to start by thanking the United Nations and Canada in particular on behalf of the government and people of Sierra Leone for the tremendous impact of the Peacebuilding Fund in consolidating and sustaining peace in Sierra Leone through 5 peaceful democratic election cycles and transitions. The impact of COVID-19 has exacerbated existing social inequalities in the world, eroded cohesion, and accelerated conflict. There is therefore increased demand for peace-building support in various nations. However, the resources available to consolidate and sustain peace are meager, and underinvestment risk reversing hard-won gains. I'm therefore heartened that for the first time, this comprehensive 5-year peace-building fund strategy sets out a bold vision for significantly scaling up work on conflict prevention and peace building. I'm hopeful that under its new strategy, the fund will maintain its niche for providing timely, catalytic, and risk-tolerant support for peace building as mandated in its terms of reference. The emphasis on regional and multi-country peace building, women and youth inclusion, and other peacekeeping and peace-building transitions is welcome. So also is the emphasis on institutionalizing PM learning and experience sharing, and to incentivize coherent work across institutional mandates for the United Nations system to work jointly in support of national efforts. Mr. Secretary General and Co-Chair, since the end of the Civil War, and especially since 2007, Sierra Leone has benefited immensely from the catalytic impact of the Peacebuilding Fund. The PBF supported and is still supporting a wide range of peacebuilding and governance initiatives in Sierra Leone, including institution building for inclusive democratic governance, election and peaceful democratic transitions, national cohesion, community conflict prevention and resolution, inter-community dialogues, access to justice, protection of human rights, improved security sector coordination, and youth and gender empowerment and inclusion. As Sierra Leone exits the formal agenda for the Peacebuilding Commission, we are continuing to consolidate and strengthen our democratic and human rights institutions, foster inclusive, accountable governance, collaborate closely with civil society and communities, promote access to justice, improve the security and disaster management sectors, make our institutions more accountable and resilient, and implement strategic activities for inclusive and sustainable development as mapped out in our medium-term National Development Plan. We have significantly lowered the risk profile of our nation, made the investment ecosystem more conducive, and invested in human capital development and critical infrastructure projects. We organized a national consultative conference on peace and national cohesion just under 2 years ago, and Parliament has since then passed a law that establishes a permanent and independent National Commission for Peace and National Cohesion. Sierra Leone will remain engaged with the PBC in implementing the national priorities of human capital development, economic diversification, climate resilience, strengthening national institutions, developing and supporting the Independent Commission for Peace on Peace and National Cohesion, and supporting our nation's COVID-19 response and recovery efforts. Our nation's story has been possible partly because of the investment by the Peacebuilding Commission. I therefore call on all UN member states to both renew their commitments to the United Nations peacebuilding effort and to mobilize adequate, predictable, and sustainable financing for peacebuilding through a broadened and donor base. In that regard, as a token of our renewed commitment, Sierra Leone pledges $200,000 United States dollars per year over the 5-year period to the peacebuilding effort of the United Nations. Thank you.
have this taking place. It's now my pleasure to call upon His Excellency Abdullah Adam Hamdok, who's the Prime Minister of the Republic of Sudan. Mr. Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Moderator. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an honor and a great pleasure to participate in this high-level replenishment conference for the United Nations Peacebuilding Fund. I would like to thank the United Nations under the able leadership of Secretary General Antonio Guterres for organizing this important conference, for giving us the opportunity to participate as co-chairs. The world continues to be faced by many challenges, complicated by the COVID-19 pandemic, as the greatest test for the international community has faced since Second World War. A test for unity, solidarity, and a demonstration of our shared commitment to multilateralism and our global partnership, despite these challenging times. From my own country's and my own region's experience, transpired that in order for peace to reign over the entire world, we do not only have to continue our efforts to stop ongoing wars, but also stand steadfast against setbacks and the re-emergence of old and new conflicts. After the heroic revolution in Sudan, on the top of the priorities of our transitional government was peacemaking and peace building, putting an end to 6.5 decades of conflict that caused the suffering of my people was one of the slogans enshrined in our great revolution: freedom, peace, and justice. However, with an eye on silencing the guns, the other was on how to bring back our country to the international community and create the exemplary partnership that allows sharing of peace, stability, and prosperity among the people of the world who stood in support of the Sudanese people's struggle. In this journey of building peace, our key partner continues to be the United Nations. Up until December 31st, the Horn of Africa hosted 4 peacekeeping missions. 2 of them operated in Sudan. Instead of a Chapter 7 peacekeeping mission, we requested a Chapter 6 specialized political mission that would work hand in hand with the government to lay the foundation for democratic transformation, good governance, justice, and the rule of law and sustainable development. Looking at transnational and trans-regional conflicts in IGAD and the Horn of Africa region, it appears that it is through multi-country and regional programs that national governments can collaborate to address cross-border conflicts, illegal migrations, and crimes, and exploit interdependency and complementarities. In a post-COVID globalized world, it becomes apparent that it is only together that we can stand, and that going solo would only temporarily solve symptoms of the problems, but not the root causes of conflicts. I believe we are all here today to renew our commitment as member states to the UN Peacebuilding Fund, that we are all both beneficiaries and donors, and reaping the fruits of concerted effort to help each other achieving the desired peace and the aspirations of our people for peace, freedom, and justice. Moving from rhetoric to action as member states, our pledging today continues a renewal of our conviction and support to the UN and the tools and mechanisms it deploys to make peace and prevention of conflict, an integral part of sustainable development and good governance. It is the positive peace concept that teaches us to move beyond absence of violence, fostering the attitudes, structures, and institutions that underpin and sustain peaceful societies to become the focus. While it requires the world citizen to act as its proactive agents, the majority of this planet are youth and women. Our revolution was successful because it was women and youth-led. And examples from all corners of the world point to the mostly overlooked and underfunded projects taken by women and youth. We should applaud that investing in women peacemakers, youth activists, and grassroots change makers is at the heart of the SG Peacekeeping Fund strategy. By promoting such system-wide and integrated approaches, the fund can catalyze support to national and local institutions in their effort to respond to multi-dimensional crises. I conclude by a personal plea to member states to generously contribute to the future generations and global peace and stability by supporting the Peacebuilding Strategy 2020-2024. I remain confident that together we shall jointly take the right decision on behalf of our people to contribute to a better world that is more peaceful, stable, and prosperous. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. We appreciate very much your contribution, and our partnership with Sudan is extremely important to us. We're now going to hear from Leone Bowie, who's the Nobel Peace Prize laureate. We look forward to hearing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Excellencies. I am honored to be a part of this panel today. Over the last 28 years, I've spent almost all of my waking moments and parts of my night working as an activist for peace in different regions around the world. During these moments, I have seen firsthand how women have committed to the quest for peace through innovation, determination, and hard work. I've also seen how they lay their lives on the line for peace in their communities. They are the first to show up when there is crisis. They are the last to leave when peace comes. However, in all of these moments, including with my own work, women's groups continue to struggle for funding. They either receive little or no funding, or they receive the drag of the funds available. However, in many parts of the world where conflicts have ended, most often women are credited for bringing peace. In my own country, Liberia, we started the Maas Action for Peace campaign with $10 US from one of the women's handbag. That $10 was used to put our statement calling for immediate unconditional ceasefire, a fruitful dialogue between the warring parties, and the deployment of an international intervention force. Over the years of our protest action, we barely got money from anywhere. It was going out, and because we knew that our efforts was the insurance policy our children needed to live, that's why we were out every day. Today, our world is riddled with more problems than we ever imagined. COVID-19, conflict in different parts of the world has exacerbated the sufferings of women, youth, and every other person. We can't continue to overstate the need for funding for peace work. I believe that peace is not just the absence of war. But peace is the presence of every condition that dignifies you and I. And if indeed this is the case, it is important for investment in peace building to be taken seriously. Your Excellencies, billions of dollars globally are put into war machineries. Peanuts are put into peace. We cannot counter war with peanuts. We cannot counter the machineries of war, the billions, with thousands of dollars. I believe if we are serious about humanity, if we are serious about the world, if we're serious about the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goal, it is time for us to invest billions into building peace around the world. It is time for us to invest not just in the military part of peace building, but in the human part of peace building. Because until people are satisfied, until everyone can dream of a better life, until the youth can see a future beyond getting on a ship to go and to Europe, we will continue to see crisis and war everywhere. I am appealing to everyone under the sound of my voice and in the name of the women who are working tirelessly around the world, from Sierra Leone to Sudan, to Liberia, to Nigeria, to every part of the world for peace and justice, that the commitments should be made to increase funding for peace building around the world. I thank you all, and I want to say a big thank you to President Bio for stepping out and making a commitment for the Republic of Sierra Leone. Thank you, Your Excellencies, and I look forward to hearing that we've received a lot of money to build peace, because without peace, there can be no universe. Without peace, there can be no people. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you so much, Lema, for that wonderful talk and source of great inspiration to us. We're very, very grateful to you for having joined us today. Our next speaker will be, well, he's my boss, but also my good friend, the Canadian Minister of Global Affairs, Marc Garneau. Minister Garneau.
Thank you very much, Bob. First of all, I would like to thank the Secretary General and his staff for hosting this conference. It is my first virtual conference as Canada's new Foreign Affairs Minister, and I'm pleased to begin with such a crucial cause as peace building. It's also an honor to co-chair the event alongside my colleagues from Sierra Leone, Sudan, and Germany, and to hear from all our distinguished guests, including the Nobel laureate from Liberia. This conference is taking place at a challenging time in our world. COVID-19 has amplified tensions. It threatens to increase conflict and reverse hard-won gains in peace, development, and gender equality worldwide. Même avant COVID-19, les Nations Unies s'attardaient davantage aux moteurs de conflit pour réduire les injustices et les tensions par des moyens pacifiques avant le recours à la violence. Cela constitue un moyen plus efficace et plus rentable de construire et de maintenir la paix, plutôt que simplement de répondre aux crises après leur apparition. Malgré nos défis financiers, nous pouvons et nous devons faire mieux. Nous ne pouvons pas rester les bras croisés parce que nous risquerions de voir le système international céder sous le poids de la réponse aux crises. En tant qu'États membres, nous avons la responsabilité de soutenir et d'encourager les efforts des Nations Unies en faveur de la paix. Ce travail est fondamental pour le mandat de l'ONU. Les résolutions de consensus sur la consolidation et le maintien de la paix, ainsi que la déclaration du 75e anniversaire des Nations Unies, nous l'ont rappelé. Pour être efficace, la consolidation de la paix doit être soutenue par un financement prévisible et durable. Canada certainly understands that. In 2019-2020, we contributed more than $165 million to support mediation, transitional justice, and other initiatives in over 30 countries. Canada has also tried to build momentum to strengthen the funding of peace-building efforts as past chair of the UN Peacebuilding Commission and as a leader in the review of the UN peacebuilding architecture last year. Together, we have made real progress, but much remains to be done, including support for the Peacebuilding Fund. The fund is crucial if the United Nations is to have the capacity to respond to the root causes of conflict in a coherent and integrated fashion. The UN's success requires fast, flexible, and risk-tolerant financing with a strong focus on gender equality, and women and youth engagement. Therefore, I am pleased to announce that Canada's contribution of $15 million to the fund for 2021. This brings our total contribution to the fund to $86 million since its establishment in 2006. We are also exploring additional options to respond to the Secretary General's call for predictable and sustainable peace-building funding. As we know, the pandemic has reduced already scarce resources, and women peace builders in particular have told us that they are in dire need of support. They need sustained, predictable funding. Canada has stepped up by supporting the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund's Rapid Response Window. We have also established an annual funding envelope to support local women peace builders in the Global South. We also believe in strong and robust civil society. These efforts have helped 186 civil society organizations, including 78 women's organizations, to play active roles in peace negotiations. Nous avons besoin de solutions à long terme et le Canada estime que les efforts des Nations unies pour construire et maintenir la paix devraient être financés au moins en partie par des contributions obligatoires. Nous sommes heureux qu'un processus de financement ait été lancé par les nouvelles résolutions sur la consolidation de la paix et le maintien de la paix. Nous attendons avec intérêt des actions concrètes, notamment lors d'une réunion de haut niveau pendant la 76e session de l'Assemblée générale. D'ici là, le Canada encourage le Conseil de sécurité à continuer de mandater des activités de consolidation de la paix. Monsieur le secrétaire général, vous vous êtes engagé à faire du soutien au programme de la consolidation de la paix une priorité dans les opérations du maintien de la paix. Le Canada s'en félicite et nous appelons tous les États membres à appuyer ces recommandations. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le ministre. On apprécie beaucoup l'annonce aujourd'hui et votre travail. Merci beaucoup pour la contribution canadienne. I now call on His Excellency Heiko Maas, who's the Foreign Minister of Germany. Minister Maas.
Thank you very much, Secretary General, dear Antonio, Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. What is the most basic requirement for human life? And what is it that we as diplomats are ultimately working for? I think the answer is simple. It's peace. And without peace, there is no prosperity, no development, no enjoyment of human rights. And people like Leima Bowie, who have experienced war, can testify to that. And therefore, Antonio, you are right in calling for a quantum leap for peace building. We know that building and sustaining peace before a crisis is much more efficient and effective than restoring peace after a crisis. Still, the United Nations budget for peacekeeping is 7 times higher than the budget for peace building. The Peacebuilding Fund strategy that we are presenting today has the potential to change this. It commits all pillars of the United Nations to work even closer together. It supports the United Nations reform process, and it enables fast and risk-tolerant funding. But even the best strategy is useless without the means to implement it. Therefore, I'm glad to announce that Germany will commit at least 50 million euros to the Peacebuilding Fund over the next 2 years. And this is also our first multi-year pledge in efforts to make funding more predictable. And we encourage other member states and the international community to join our efforts. Of course, the pandemic is putting massive strains on all of our budgets. But if we don't mitigate its negative effects on peace and stability now, we will pay a much higher price in the future. Therefore, we also seek to broaden the fund's donor base. Potential partners could include international financial institutions and the private sector. And in the coming months, together with the United Nations, we will organize a high-level event on innovative funding for peace. And once more, we will be hoping for your strong support in the most noble task that our work has to offer, building peace. Thank you very much.
Minister, this is very welcome news. We celebrate Germany's leadership at this point. Your contribution has been tremendous, and we look forward to working with you on the innovative funding initiative as well. Our final speaker in this segment will be Ambassador Anna Kasoor. Ambassador, we're very glad to have you with us. You've been such a critical part of rebuilding and maintaining the architecture for peace, and we'd love to hear your comments now. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Chair, Secretary General, Excellencies, friends. It's really an honor for me to have this opportunity to share some of the findings of this panel of independent, eminent persons, as it were. We were 5 of us representing 5 continents and a broad background and experience. The main point we make in our long letter to the Secretary General is that the architecture is in place, the house has been built, and it's now a matter of furbishing the house and to provide our common peace-building house with very much needed resources. And it's a worthwhile investment. It also needs to be better known. This architecture with the Peacebuilding Commission, the Peacebuilding Support Office, and the Peacebuilding Fund has a hinge role to play, together with the entire UN family coming along in a deep sense, thanks to the Secretary General's important reforms. And this hinge role should certainly be played even more by the Peacebuilding Commission. It can further strengthen its role as a place to go to for countries in need of advice from peers, to get the accompaniment from peers on prevention of armed conflict and or to support them in post-conflict peace building. And I know that the Prime Minister of Sudan is one excellent example of how this can be done. The Peacebuilding Commission's role is also about advocating support and to work, for example, with regional organizations, international financial institutions and donors with advocacy, and not least to give advice to the Security Council. We also see local actors, communities, young people, women, people affected by peace and war, that they should have full and relevant participation. They are implementers, they are recipients, they should be put at the center, their agency be respected. And the national ownership of countries in conflict also means national responsibility. Women's participation in peace building, in political and economic processes underpinning peace is a requirement. We cannot exclude 50% of the population. Achievements have been made in this regard, but many of us still have a very long way to go. Women are an integral part, and adequate resources, committed leadership at all levels is needed. Let me use the slogan, no women, no peace, and let me say no youth, no peace. We see some fragmentation that needs to be avoided, sometimes within the UN, but also between international actors. And here, leadership and guidance at all levels of the UN and beyond, they are essential. Financing is now, I believe, the most important outstanding issue. It needs to be enough and it needs to be predictable. We know that fragility drives poverty. International financial institutions, donors, governments in countries affected need to come together and move into what we coined as good peace building donorship. And I'm really happy that this notion will now be taken forward by the Swedish government and that many other governments will join this undertaking. So what is this about? It's about the international financial institutions. It's about the World Bank and the UN maximizing their complementarity in the field. It's about bringing in the IMF for macroeconomics and debt issues. It's, I believe, about member states in the World Bank board to support this coherence. It's about the Peacebuilding Commission reaching out to the members of the boards of the IMF and the World Bank. It's about donors focusing long term. It's about synergies between the many financing instruments. It's about avoiding creating new funding instruments. It's about reducing earmarking. And I believe it's about stopping competition for mediation roles or stopping inappropriate external influence and start working together. And this is what good peace building donorship is about. I saved today's focus to last. The Eminent Persons Group found that the Peacebuilding Fund has a key catalytic role. Seed money and quick and timely action are essential to kickstart preventative action or peacebuilding efforts and to be supported long-term by long-term funding. Secretary General, your recommendations in your 2018 report on how to increase funding and find new mechanisms, those recommendations are still valid and member states should come forward in this regard. And a conversation should be opened on assessed contributions even, since we know how peace actually comes about and that the efforts made in sustaining peace are essential. Existing donors should expand their contributions, and we've already heard some. And I believe that it's important that also new donors come forward. The pandemic has put the world in a very dire situation. Donor resources may shrink, but I hope that everyone can now put resources to where they are most needed, and that building back better will also lead to a new way of approaching problems so that we will have a long-term and sustainable peace building work and come back stronger together. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much, Annika, for your leadership and for your talk to us today. It's very, very, very helpful. Colleagues, that concludes the featured speakers.